Oh, I would like this absolutely.
Go ahead and start.
Do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, go right ahead.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being intrepid travelers today. My name is Bob Hudgens. I was the location manager on Groundhog Day, and I had the good privilege of being the guy that kind of got to show Harold Ramis and the production designer, a guy named David Nichols, around as we scouted locations for this film. And ended up here in Woodstock. It was not a direct path to Woodstock. We looked at a lot of towns, as all films do. They want to make sure they find the right location to tell the story of the kind of the character of the town. In this particular case, we were replicating a real town, Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, and that really kind of makes it a different homework assignment when you have a real place that you're trying to replicate. And we started out looking for towns that really exactly looked like Punxsutawney. And Punxsutawney is just what we termed a Main Street town. It was just one road through the center of town, and kind of all the things were right off of it, with the exception of their Gobbler's Knob, where they do the ceremony, is actually in a park kind of outside of town. So we were going to do exactly that. Originally, we were scouting everything just verbatim for the Punxsutawney reality, and I got to travel a real wide range of kind of the upper Midwest to look for that. Harold Ramis and Bill Murray are both from Chicago, and so that was my homework assignment, was to find something that looks like Punxsutawney, relatively close to Chicago, so they could be home with their families on weekends. So we started that trek, and we looked at tons and tons of towns. The community that came probably closest would have probably been our choice, was Mineral Point, Wisconsin. Anybody knows that. And Mineral Point's a beautiful community, and but it wasn't quite right for us. We still weren't happy with it for not anything really specific. It was just it's a little more spread out than Punxsutawney, and anyway, we get really picky. We had the good fortune of coming through Baraboo, Wisconsin, which Baraboo has a very unique character to it. It's a summer home for the circus. And so it's a very silly kind of town, in that everything has a circus motif. The trash cans have like elephants and all this really fun stuff. And it's a square. And we really we walked around the square once and walked around it again. And we really were initially just looking at all the accoutrement, because you'll see in our film a lot of Groundhog Day stuff on the trash cans and all those kinds of things, and the production designer just shamelessly ripped off a lot of the elements we saw in Baraboo that were put in this film. So you'll kind of make that adaptation. We owe a little homage to Baraboo, but the main thing was, after a couple times around the square, Harold realized that a square was a better format for our film, because Bill Murray was trapped. He was in this circular motion rather than in a linear one. So, I mean, if he was on a Main Street town, he could just start walking and get out. So that was, at that point, we made the decision to shift gears and look for a town with a town square. So they turned to me, and I, being the guy who knows these towns, asked if there was a town similar to Baraboo without the circus stuff, closer to Chicago. And so, luck would have it, I was very familiar with Woodstock. I had the pleasure in an earlier project working on planes, trains, and automobiles here. We did about 3 days worth of shooting here, just the courthouse, and we did a scene over where Steve Martin gets in the back of a semi. And so, anyway, I was real familiar with Woodstock. So the next morning we drove into town, and lo and behold, it was a real short decision process. After all the towns and all the hundreds and hundreds of miles we'd driven, we drove in. I had a relationship with a gentleman, John Shares, who runs the Opera House. We were able to come in, and John led us up in the bell tower. And literally within 10 minutes of driving onto the square, we made our decision to shoot the film here. So it was really, it's like when it's right, and they all knew it and agreed. And the big decision of kind of where that town was going to be was made. Then a lot of other kind of secondary decisions get made. The biggest of which was, as I mentioned before, Punxsutawney celebrates outside of town in the park. Well, initially we started looking around here. Once we picked this as our main location, then we started to fill in the gaps of all our ancillary locations. But you know, we found there's a state park over in McHenry, not very far away, that we found a clearing that matched Punxsutawney just spot on. It was quite good. But after quite a few days of being on the square, the production designer suggested to Harold that, why don't we do the ceremony here? And you know, that way everything is concentrated, and we'd already given up the idea of sticking to Punxsutawney anyway, so let's go with our own movie. So we ended up building our structure, which became Gobbler's Knob, just over in this little portion of the square right behind you. So, you know, as you know, our sets kind of came together, two of the first locations we actually determined were this building. Since we parked in front of it, we went inside, then we walked back out, and the hotel where Andy McDowell needed to stay, the Pennsylvania Hotel, Harold immediately said, you know, this will work for the Pennsylvania. Done deal. Great. That went off the list. We then got in the car, and our next biggest location, and we always kind of go down a priority list, after the town was the bed and breakfast. We saw so much of the bed and breakfast in it, you know, in the film, and it was kind of a pivotal, you know, piece of the pie. So we drove in literally within about 5 or 6 streets. We found the house that we decided to use as a bed and breakfast. Harold immediately said, "This is perfect. Let's do it." And the reason was there was a very long approach. The street leads dead into the house, and so for the final shot, the reveal of Andy and Bill walking away, we knew we needed that shot of them going down the street, in which, you know, there's no better way to do that than a house at the end of a T. So we found the right configuration. The house was of a proper stature, and it was a beautiful old home, and so that was done. So it was actually, a lot of things fell together once we, you know, made the decision to come to Woodstock. So that's some preliminary elements of how we made our decisions to shoot here. Subsequently, there were a lot of interesting things that transpired. There was a lot of, as you know, lots of scenes in the film. We had to determine where we were going to have the Tip Top Cafe. We were able to do that in a vacant storefront that had been I believe, a clothing shop, and had been gutted, and we went in and created our little restaurant. There was no water, there was no electricity. It was just a bare bones little place, and it was all movie magic. Everything you see in that restaurant was a set. We had to run a hose next door to get water. We had all movie electricity from our generators powering all the lights. So everything you saw was movie. Most of the food came from local restaurants, and we did that. Most of the baked goods were from the Swiss bakery. So we really were able to kind of turn our little portion of Woodstock into Hollywood. Logistically, we kind of base camped right over here at the time what is now the bank, which was an old post office. They had just built a new post office at that time. And so we were able to turn that kind of into our base camp. Our caterer set up behind there. That was our main lunch location. And we had a lot of trucks. For instance, Bill Murray's camper and all those things were parked. We totally parked in that street and closed that off for actually several weeks. They allowed us to shut that little section of the square down to park in there. So that was kind of our base camp, our permanent kind of fort. The rest of the town we used in a lot of different ways, and we can talk as we walk around the square. As you know, we had a lot of extras on that film, lots and lots. There were upwards of 4,000 extras on some days. So we had a lot of holding areas. There was an old department store over on this side of the square that we used. A building over there. The basement of the courthouse wasn't occupied at the time, so we were able to use that for the bar scene and extras holding. So we did a lot of things. and kept things very contained. A few of the locations we didn't do in Woodstock were our stage. All the interiors of the bed and breakfasts were built on stage in a warehouse in Cary, which is about 20 miles away, just outside Crystal Lake. We shot the German restaurant in Chicago, the hospital in Chicago, and the television station that you see in the opening sequence where Bill's the weatherman, also in Chicago. So, those are the kind of the general layout of how we put the movie together. We'll walk around and, you guys please ask questions, and we'll tell you a few stories as we go, and have some fun. Any questions so far? Yes, ma'am? Oh, thank you. The gravel pit was in Loves Park, which is just outside of Rockford, and it was literally about another 30 miles to the west of us. And okay, I want to tell you a semi-funny story. We shot the gravel pit the first week, at least the part with Bill in it, and Andy and Chris, which was just literally a very, very easy part of our program. We just shot one day over there with the principal actors. The second unit where they actually did the stunt came back in subsequent weekends and shot. I believe it took them a total of 4 days to totally get that sequence shot. But when we shot that, and that was on the first Friday of our first week of shooting, and we were moving back to town, and the town of Woodstock had kind of at that point really embraced us being here, and they threw us a party in the old courtroom of the courthouse. And we basically got here, we worked late, everybody was there when we got off of work, but we came in, and the party was just getting started, and I was standing there speaking actually to a couple of the city fathers, and a couple of police cars pulled up out front, and then one of my drivers got out, and he was with them, and could tell there was something going on. I went down, and we had a very unfortunate accident where the honey wagon, which is in our vernacular, it's the long trailer where they have the dressing rooms and where the actors change, not the principal actors, they have those very nice motorhomes, but the secondary actors change, and the crew uses those. It's the portable restrooms when you're in remote locations. Well, something happened, and the tanks came open halfway between here and Loves Park, and this poor unfortunate couple that was right behind them, this elderly couple, hit this kind of slick mess and spun out of control and went into a ditch, and we had a little bit of a problem with that. And so they, of course, thought we had done it on purpose. Of course, our guy said no, it was completely an accident. Who knows the real truth? But that was at the end of our first night. It was kind of like it hit the fan already. So, so there we go. And but overall, things went pretty smoothly in town. It's really hard to do a project that has this big of a footprint for this long. Generally, in my kind of vernacular, I can go anywhere for 3 days. Pretty much any film you can go in, and after that people are kind of like, they're like family. Your visit's over. Well, we ended up having 6 weeks of shooting here on the square because of bringing the Gobbler's Knob here and all the ancillary shooting we did, which was a very, very big impact on the town. And so we had to work very hard to make sure the traffic flowed, that the parking lots were available, because we consumed big portions of this square as we were shooting it. We had very large, trucks. I believe we had 12 semis of equipment that we moved around every day. It was just, it was a very large, Hollywood picture. And we had a lot of, communicating that we had to do to the town, because our picture was different than most projects. Most things are in kind of a linear timeline, and it is, you can, build in some change in weather and different elements as you go. But ours wasn't. It was the same day over and over again, so we had to have a lot of consistency. And so we had kind of set out, through the first time we shot stuff, we established weather. And so if it was X, we would kind of go back. But what I'm trying to get at is, every day we were here, depending on the weather, we might be doing different things. And so we kind of had to tell people, well, if it was going to be sunny, we'll do this work. If it's cloudy, we'll do this work. If it's snowing, guess what? We're going to do this and do something else. So it was a lot of communication with all the people on the square. I did 115 contracts with businesses on the square to make things happen here. We had cable on every building, lights on every building, all the way around. We turned this entire square into a set. So it was a lot of fun and a big challenge as well. Yes, sir.
What time of year did you film?
We started shooting, I believe, March 3rd.
March 3rd.
Unfortunately, in Chicago, this is the one small element here is that, it would have been nice to shoot a winter movie in the winter, but not required. We were able to make snow. In fact, all the snow you saw on the square was man-made. Every morning a semi full of ice would pull back in right there, had a giant ice chipper, and we would just make snow starting, very early in the morning, depending on the days. The before the snowstorm scenes, where the big scenes of the Gobbler's Knob, we had patchy snow, so we didn't have to make that much snow. But for the night scenes, which were post-storm, we had to lay in basically what you see now. I mean, we had to lay in a lot of snow. So in the areas where we were doing our action, we had our ice, which really does replicate. The snowballs that they pack were ice. They were very hard snowballs. But in the perimeter areas, we'd use foam, which sprays out a lot more quickly and has the same look in the kind of the far distant. But we always had the contingent, because we knew we were starting in March, and you have spring snows here. And so we knew that we were going to have a snowfall at some point. It was about our 8th day of shooting that we got the weather report that we were going to have snow. The one place we really wanted to have a beautiful snowfall was for the final scene. And so we were prepared, and the neighborhood was ready that if we got good snow and we were able to move over there, do that final shot sequence. And all the people cooperated. They didn't shovel their walks. The city didn't plow the street. And so we were able to make that shot with so that was the one scene with real snow in the entire film. So, yay. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, did you receive any reaction from the people of Punxsutawney when they found out you were filming in Woodstock?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
There was some real reaction. We did some, recce's. Bill actually went the year that we shot. Bill went and was up on the podium with them and made a big to-do of, and so the cat was out of the bag. They knew we were doing a Groundhog Day film somewhere other than in Punxsutawney. But I think over the years, Maggie probably knows better than I, the reactions of people from Punxsutawney, but it seems fairly amicable now, because everybody benefits from the movie. I mean, it's really helped them as well, because a few people actually go to the trouble of finding out that we didn't shoot it there.
Maybe you can film Groundhog Day 2 there if you want.
Yeah, who knows? Any more questions? Okay, let's kind of cut through and meet up over by the